Thank you so much, and it's such a pleasure to be here.
Who here reads The Daily Love? I'm kind of curious. Amazing. You guys are awesome. It's so nice to meet you. I've been behind a computer writing it for 6 years, and it's so cool to kind of meet you and see you and say hello. For those of you that don't read The Daily Love, shame on you. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. It's a website that was sort of founded with this idea of bringing inspiration to the masses in a way that is accessible, grounded, and also beautiful. And the reason why I'll sort of speak to that because I've been through a lot in my very short 31 years here on the planet, like addictions and ups and lows in the music business and having money and not having money and working with Grammy artists and all kinds of crazy stuff. And sort of the bottom line that I've kind of come to believe in is that on a certain level, everybody, doesn't matter whether you're the President of the United States, the Queen of England, spiritual teacher, yoga teacher, janitor, doesn't matter who you are, we're all seeking a deeper level of connection. And that's really what it's about. Connection with what? Connection with higher power, connection with community, connection with ourselves, connection with the purpose, something that's greater than us so that we can be of service to the world. And what's interesting is that right now, and it's so cool that stuff like this is happening, like Wanderlust is happening, and the fact that Lululemon is like taking over the world to me is huge, and it's so good look. Like you just wear those things, and you just sometimes I wish I could be a woman to wear those because they're just incredible how they make you look. But it's amazing that this world that we're a part of is kind of really starting to take off because human beings tend to focus on survival, and because of that, forget that the thing that we need most in order to survive, and not just survive but thrive, is a connection to something greater than ourselves. So for me, that looks like the divine. If you're an atheist or if you're having some kind of existential crisis, something greater than yourself could be a cause that's greater than yourself. It could be nature, it could be energy, it could be God. It doesn't really matter. It could be Shiva. There's thousands of Hindu gods that could be your higher power. It doesn't really matter, but there's this connection that we're forgetting, and what do we put in its place? Well, sex, drugs, rock and roll, food, bad toxic relationships. And the reason why is because I believe that every human being has good motives. Every human being has great motives. Whether, you're what we could consider to be the greatest evil on the planet to the greatest saints on the planet, all of us are looking for a sense of connection and a sense of certainty. And the question is, where do we get that from? Where do we get our connection from? Do we get our connection from a bottle of alcohol, or do we get it from, ardy chandrasana? Do we get it from drugs? Or do we get it from breath of fire? Do we get it from a toxic relationship where there's lots of drama? Or do we get it from facing ourselves and talking about our shadows and going to scary emotional places that we tend to avoid? It really that's really, I think, why we're here, is to become aware of patterns that we've had and go, you know what, those patterns met my needs on a certain level, and I'm just gonna upgrade my patterns. Because if you came here to this talk or to Wanderlust, or if you're in any type of transformational process, life coaching, therapy, angel work, whatever it is that you're into, and you're trying to fix yourself, that is a dead-end path. Because I don't believe anyone here needs to be fixed. I think our core is perfect, and all we need to do is change patterns. And it doesn't have to be some big, huge, dramatic thing. And, who am I to be up here having this conversation, telling you these things? Well, when I was about 19, I'm 31, so that was 12 years ago. That seems like a lot. I moved to Los Angeles, and I was in the music business very quickly. I got an internship at a very big management company. And what's interesting about Hollywood, especially when you're in like one of those behemoth places, is that it's incredible how much can get done in 1 week. Like a week could create, a campaign for a whole movie release, or it could create, a whole tour that's doing, millions of tickets worldwide. And I got so fascinated by this ability to create so much in such a short period of time, because coming from Kansas, where I'm from, a month and you could do, barely get the garage emptied out or something, you know what I mean? It's a slower pace. And there's nothing wrong with the slower pace. It's beautiful. I've come to appreciate a slower pace. But at that time, I was so fascinated by what could get done. And the other thing I got fascinated by was this power to be able to say, hey, I'm Mastin calling from this company, and they would take the phone call, and I could make something happen. And, someone who comes from a sense of feeling powerless, because I was kind of the nerd in school and the outcast and the fat kid and very awkward with girls and just never had a sense of connection or a sense of power. When I got that power, I started to become addicted to it, because I was like, oh my God, look how special I am. And what's interesting about that concept of feeling special is that, yes, as a soul, we are all unique and special, and we have a gift to give to the world. But as a human being, unless we add value to the lives of other people, no one else will see that. And that's what's interesting about today's day and age. I'm really grateful for a lot of the material that's kind of come on the market in the last sort of 10 to 20 years in the realm of personal growth because, before Louise Hay, before Oprah, there was no self-help on the bookshelves. There was no ability to access this stuff except for in occult bookstores. Think the idea, James Allen, that can change my thoughts, change my life. One of the most common phrases used in personal growth was considered an occult philosophy only 30, 40 years ago. So the fact that it's that this exists, if this was existing 30, 40 years ago, we'd all be arrested and put in jail or shamed on or something like that because it's, this type of gathering is strange to sort of I guess you could call it the fundamentalist mindset. And so I'm really grateful that there's all this material. But what's happening in the world is that there is sort of it's kind of the same thing happens with all material, whether it's sacred books like the Bible or the Quran, is that people take one little thing and they make this one little thing that's maybe not in context and blow it up to mean everything. And so one of those things in the personal growth movement is this idea that I'm special. And one step further is, if this is a thought that really makes me laugh, and I'm so guilty of it, by the way. If I put something on my vision board, I deserve it. Think about that for a second. Have you ever put something on the vision board and you're like, that thing has been on my vision board for 2 years and it's not here. This law of attraction stuff totally doesn't work. But what have you been doing? Have you been adding value? Have you been getting outside of yourself, or has it been all self-focused? And what's interesting is that we can really start to use these principles in a way that justifies the ego, and I am the king of that, because when I first got on the spiritual path, I had what you would consider to be a very hard spiritual ego. This is what a spiritual ego sounds like. Oh, it makes me quiver just thinking about it. You've never heard of Deepak Chopra? Pfft, you're so not spiritual. Wait a minute, hold on. Do you realize there's gluten in that pizza? You clearly don't care about your body. By the way, you're drinking Diet Coke, you realize how acidic that is? I mean, green juice is so much more alkalizing, right? How could you possibly put Diet Coke in your body? This is incredible. You don't wear Lululemon? Wait, what? You're wearing old raggedy stuff? What are you talking about? And have you ever had that experience of someone who is so spiritual, but you feel so judged in their presence? That was me. Who here has had that experience? I just want to know, right? So now I actually think an unconscious person with an ego is way more fun to be around than the spiritual ego. Because really you're who died and made you, Jesus? You know what I mean? Really? Or how about this one? This is one that's really funny. I've been reading The Power of Intention, and I'm realizing that my boyfriend he's not really into yoga, all this stuff. He's so not spiritual. He doesn't even know who Wayne Dyer is. This is insane. And I'll ask, yeah, but is he kind to you? He's so kind to me, but he doesn't understand yoga. I'm like, wasn't the point of yoga kindness? Maybe he doesn't need asana in this lifetime. So there's this idea that we've taken a lot of these principles and ground them into our sort of mind to sort of further our self-righteousness. And the reason why I'm saying this is not because I'm up here being so perfect, is that I live this and I'm still in recovery around this process. Because it's very easy to have an understanding or knowledge of a practice or a principle or a belief system and then go into judgment if people don't have that. But really, if you think about that, that's no different, if we're yogis or if we're people on this path, that's no different than say, I'm also a Christian mystic, than sort of the fundamentalist Christian movement that judges, gay people for wanting to get married. I mean, really, it's no different, just a different version of it. Oh, well, we're so self-righteous because, of course, gay people should get married, but my boyfriend who doesn't read Wayne Dyer is not spiritual. It's a subtle version of the same thing. And so my hope for this process is to kind of take away the labels, because the labels don't really matter. I always say I'd rather hang out with an atheist, meat-eating trucker Republican than the passive-aggressive mean yoga teacher. And you guys know who I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? The people who literally, it feels like they're creating a stress bubble in their body because you aren't in alignment properly. I said externally rotate your upper arm. What's wrong with you? External, not internal. You're okay, aren't you a yoga teacher? When was the last time you practiced? Anyway, sorry, no. I love yoga, and I like to poke fun at it. But the idea is really what spirituality is, and the point of yoga, and the point of everything, it boils down to one thing, which is, are you loving or are you not? Because if you're loving with no labels, way cooler than being very judgmental with all the cool labels. And so how do we get there? Well, I thought I was so special, right? Because I could start making those phone calls. And then it wasn't just phone calls. It was like I'm putting together multi-million-dollar tours. And I'm flying all over the world. And I'm hanging out with all these rock stars. And oh my gosh, like this is so incredible. And for a kid from Kansas who had a zero identity complex and super low self-esteem, this was incredible. And to fit in, I developed the sort of requisite cliche Hollywood sex, drugs, and rock and roll sort of lifestyle. And not just to fit in, but also to get work done, because one of the problems of getting that much work done is you exhaust your adrenaline glands, you get cortisol in the body, you deplete your body of its sort of natural essence, and you're not at factory standard of when you're born, and so you need to supplement things. And on the low end, people supplement with coffee and caffeine. On the high end, like me, I was doing cocaine and Adderall to just like go and make it happen. And at some point, if that's your life, it's unsustainable. And what happens when you do that? Does it go on forever because you're just superhuman? You crash, right? And so I crashed and burned, and it was funny because I had worked 2.5 years at this management company, and then right as like things were going great, I got the dream job of my life. Worst thing that ever happened to me. Who here has ever gotten exactly what you wanted and it totally sucked? I'm just curious. It could be your boyfriend, a relationship, right? You're like, really? This is what I wanted, and I'm still not happy? This is incredible. Well, why it was horrible for me is because I went from a junior manager to senior vice president at 21. Little young screwball, right? And thinking to myself, now I'm even more special. And so this continued, and after 3 months, I got my ass fired, and it was a downhill struggle from there. And at that point, because I was going so fast, I had never faced my issues. And it wasn't, just put it away, do the drugs, do the alcohol, work it away, not face myself. And by the way, it's still easy to do that with less obvious ways. You can, hide yourself. I can't tell you how many people hide themselves in their yoga practice. There's nothing wrong with asana, but asana is one of 8 limbs of yoga if you study yoga. It's 1/8 of yoga, if you will. And so the idea is, how can we start to face ourselves? So when the universe crashes, when your life crashes, at that time I thought, oh my God, God is against me. This is my dream job. Who here has had all hell break loose in their life at some point or another, and you felt like the divine or life was just totally against you, right? That was me in that moment. And I was just like, what the hell? And then I got my first self-help book because, you look for answers. And I remember it was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I think I got it at Kinko's or something. I don't remember where I got it. But rest in peace, Stephen. Love you, boy. And I remember reading one line, I think it was on the outside, and it said, very simply, seek to understand before you are understood. And I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me that before? I've been trying to get people to understand me this whole time. What is going on here? How come I'm 21, 22 years old? How come I never learned this in high school or college? This is crap, right? And so that sort of put me on the personal growth path. And then what's interesting, I've come to believe about the divine or life or the universe, is that it knows exactly how to speak to you, like just in your language. There's people that say there's only one way. It's like, what do you mean one way? There's 7 billion people, 7 billion ways. As long as you're going to love, it doesn't really matter because we all have, it's like saying there's only one language. Could you imagine if we walked around saying, the only way to communicate in the world is to speak English, and anyone that doesn't speak English is worthless and has nothing to add, they cannot add value, nor could they possibly communicate with other people. Be ignorance, right? Same thing is true in the path to love. So, why I say that is because at that time in my life, there were 2 ways the divine could get my attention. Not through yoga conferences or like kind of the easy, kind of normal ways or teachers. I was far too arrogant for that. Hot girls and successful business people. So it's really funny and ironic how this works. So I show up to my very first spiritual conference because I had a band, had a song in that movie. Remember the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? So somehow the band I was working with got a song in that movie, completely changed my life. And I went there, the movie didn't change my life. What changed my life was the conference. I went to the conference, and it was so strange to me because I'm coming from Hollywood, and there's like chakra photography and like all these crystals and all this stuff. And I'm like, who are these people and what planet did they come from? Like, this is insane. Like, I don't understand any of you. Who's that girl? Oh, and what was she doing? She was taking chakra photos. So I'm like, I don't know what a chakra photo is, but I want to talk to her, right? So I go talk to her, and she you know, ladies, because you're here and you're on the spiritual path, when you can sense a guy who's like fresh out of a wound and so not good for you, and you're like, you know he needs work? That was me, right? So she wanted nothing to do with me, like nothing. But she did have some pity on me, and she goes, well, thank you and all, but actually you might want to listen to this. And she handed me a CD, and I was like, what? I wanted your phone number. Like, what is this? And it was actually a CD called Energy Anatomy by Carolyn Mace. And do you guys know Carolyn Mace? Yeah. She's incredible. And so I was like, weird. So it sat in my car for a week or a month or something like that, and I finally put it in, and all of a sudden this woman had me, and it was Grace. And if you haven't gotten Energy Anatomy by Carolyn Mace, it's MYSS, Carolyn Mace. It's like a PhD on why things happen the way they do. It's incredible. Changed my life. And it put me on this personal growth path for good. I was like, you know what? This information is so vital, so important, so necessary. No one knows about this. So I decided that I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life and take all my Hollywood training and figure out a way to combine personal growth and sort of like bigger sort of brands. So what did I decide to do? I decided to start a clothing line. Now get ready for the name, okay? And my intention with this was to go teach other people what to do. Now you know the state of consciousness that I'm in, right? This ego, spiritual ego, self-righteousness stuff. So here's the name of the clothing company. I still own the trademark, but I haven't done anything with it yet. Love Yourself. And I'm sitting there, like basically sitting there going, yeah, all y'all out there need to love yourselves. While I'm binging on food, doing Adderall, like, you know what I mean? Did you see the irony in that? It's like, and here's the thing about spiritual teachers, by the way, you guys. All spiritual teachers, I don't care who it is, who your favorite teacher who you might think is incredible, they are incredible, but we all come to teach what we need to learn ourselves. Okay, so any teacher that tells you that that's not true is hiding something, okay? Because the only way we figure this stuff out is trial and error. No one is born this immaculate child that's like, I have it all figured out. Nobody has it all figured out. I'm at a point in my career right now where I've pretty much met everyone that I've wanted to meet in the personal growth business, and everyone still has, how was that interview? Was that okay? Or like, how's my hair? And you're like, how many books have you written, lady? Like what? But there's still those very real human emotions. And so I let myself off the hook by saying that. But what's interesting about this clothing line, it was beautiful. It was, kind of Southern California. We got it on all the celebrities, and it's like Fred Siegel and Kitson, and actually a lot of orders from Japan. And I love Japan because Japan only orders 2 sizes of shirts, which makes it so much easier to produce, and like 7 sizes. Can I get extra, extra, extra small and triple XL? I'm like, no, you cannot. And so, but it was great, and we went really well, but we launched at probably one of the worst times you could launch a business. August of 2008. Y'all know what happened about a month later, right? You're like, yes, Mastin, we know. I don't want to think about that again, right? So we launched in August, we got our orders, and then Lehman Brothers. And I'm sitting there going like, oh my God, like what are we going to do? Now what's interesting about that time is our orders started to pick up. Why? Because we represented a new opportunity, an inspirational message, an aspirational message. And what I've come to find out since, check this out, over half the Fortune 500 companies that are in existence today got started in a recession or a depression, which is fascinating to think about. Because if you think about the whole concept of how powerful our thoughts are, in a recession or a depression, most people are thinking thoughts of what? Scarcity, right? Now, it might be true that their bank account is scarce compared to what it was, or their home value has gone down compared to what it was, but you and I both know that we are not defined by our circumstances, are we? So it is a competitive advantage to be thinking in not necessarily a positive way, but a pragmatic, empowered way. Do you guys know the difference between empowered and positive? Here's the difference. Let's just say that you went through a heartbreaking breakup. I know no one in here has been through one of those, so it's a really sort of esoteric idea to think about. Imagine you went through that really heartbreaking breakup, right? And it's like the day after. And like, especially as a woman, you have that oxytocin rush that needs to be filled, and you're just like so missing him, and your friend's like, so how are you? And you're like, I'm really positive right now. It's okay, I'm good. Everything about my physiology says what? Yeah, or ladies, how about this? Guys aren't clued on to this one. If a woman says, if you ask a woman how she is, and she goes, I'm fine. Does that mean she's fine? What does that probably mean? That she's not fine, right? Or since we're at a yoga place, have you ever had the yoga teacher? I know I'm being mean to yoga teachers today. I'm sorry. It's revenge. You know what I mean? Like, but have you ever had the yoga teacher? Have you ever had the yoga teacher that's up there and they're trying so hard to be positive, but you can just feel their anger? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? And they're there and they're like, let's right now, okay? Inhale, I said, inhale, right? And they're trying to be positive, right? But what's really going on is something completely different, right? So empowered is different. Empowered says, you know what? I'm really pissed off right now. I'm really sad right now. It's kind of like, you guys know about tapping in here? Even though I'm mad at myself, I love myself. That's empowerment. Even though my bank account is low, even though my circumstances suck, even though I just got my heart broken, I can create something better because I'm not defined by my circumstances. And why empowerment is so much better than just positivity. I love positive thinking, but you can positive think your way into denial. Just like you can negative think your way into denial. I'm pragmatic. I like to know what's going on and really acknowledge what's kind of like an addiction process. Tommy Rosen will be speaking later on addiction, right? The first step is to admit that you're powerless, right? That's pragmatic. It's not like you're sitting there in your addiction going, everything's okay, as you're like dying of an overdose. Like, I'm fine, right? Like, no. And so that's really the next level for us to step into is this admittance of whatever we're feeling. And, another great reference for this is, you guys know Brene Brown? Yeah. Daring Greatly. Her book is all about vulnerability, this concept of being vulnerable. When I'm up here talking, when do you feel most connected to me? When I'm talking about my mistakes and the things that I've been through, or I'm talking about some spiritual principle that I learned? What's more engaging to you? The mistakes, because you probably think to yourself, oh, I did that, or not maybe what I did, but something like that, right? So that's what the power of vulnerability is, being able to go, you know what? This really shitty thing happened, but this is what I learned from it. Instead of just saying, everything's fine, right? And so where was I going with? Oh, right. So with Love Yourself, I was in this state of positivity, even though things were not fine. And what's interesting, too, is we grow in life, we expand, we face, fears, because let me ask you a question. Let me stop in the middle of my story. Who here wants to live a fearless life? A fearless life. This is a trick question. If you want to live a fearless life, stay in your comfort zone. Stay in your comfort zone. Because the thing about fear, I could go on for this one, I could go on and on. There's another really big misconception in the world, and we've heard it, and I really think it's because it's a misinterpretation of like A Course in Miracles. Fear is the opposite of what? That's right. Total BS. Complete BS. If you didn't have fear, you wouldn't be alive because your ancestors would have been extinct long ago. Fear is a survival mechanism. There's a part of our body and our brain called the amygdala. It's part of the limbic system. It's fight or flight response. So when you get triggered, when there's uncertainty, when there's something comes up that your survival is threatened, fight or flight. Now, in women, since this room is full of a lot of women, there's also another survival mechanism. And if you have a toxic relationship in your life, this will probably tell you why. Mend and attend. I need to survive because I have to take care. The way I survive is by taking care of somebody. So I link survival to nurturing. Now, that can be awesome if you're trying to take care of a child, unless the child is 35, right? That can be awesome in a boyfriend or a husband, unless they're abusing you, or very negative or very toxic, right? So we want to start to understand that fear is an appropriate response. Like, imagine this for a second. Imagine if fear is the opposite of love, then that would basically mean that if you're in a dark alley and there's a guy with a gun, to be afraid would be an unloving thing. Does that make any sense? Let's step into common sense corner for a second. Does that make any sense? No. Fear is an appropriate response to uncertainty. That's what it is. Fear is an appropriate response to uncertainty because uncertainty is really the thing that every human being has a hard time dealing with. And when we get uncertain, what do? Some people drink, some people smoke, some people do drugs, some people eat. A wise person, probably a lot of you, goes and does an asana practice or a meditation practice if you get uncertain, right? You might want to ask yourself, when I feel uncertain, what do I do? Because the answer to that question will tell you a lot about why you are where you are right now. In fact, the quality of your life is the quality of your relationship with uncertainty. Because think about this. If we're being pragmatic, is the future certain or uncertain? And is it 100% uncertain or 99% uncertain, 1%? How uncertain is it? Like 1,000%, right? Like we really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we think we do. And think about this. Here's the power of certainty. What is the number one indicator of a healthy economy? Stability. It's actual indicator, like an economic indicator. GOP? No. GDP? Sorry, I don't want to keep it political. Jobs, sort of. GDP, sort of. Those are all things that follow this one thing. Consumer confidence. What is consumer confidence? It's collective belief of how certain the financial future will be. That's all it is. So certainty is very powerful. So we want to start to understand, what do we do when we get uncertain? So for me, when I got uncertain back then, I would get more and more angry, more and more self-righteous. I would do more and more things to distract myself from my feelings, because the thing I didn't want to feel the most was powerless. That's the thing I didn't want to feel most. So we're going along with Love Yourself. And in 1 week, I now call it my divine storm. At the time, I called it what the F is going on right now, right? And so what happened? In 1 week, the business actually shut down because our investors pulled out because they lost 70% of their wealth in the downturn. So my business partner and I had trouble. And when we start to expand, a lot of our stuff comes up. And so our stuff was coming up. So we broke up. The girl that I was dating, she and I broke up. My roommate gave me 30-day notice of moving out. My lower back went out. And at 27, 28, I got gout in my big foot, my big toe. Gout. That's for like 70, 80-year-old men who drink beer and eat red meat, which I don't do either of. So I'm thinking to myself, like, like this is a second sort of divine storm. And what I've come to realize is those moments of crisis, the title of this talk is From Crisis to Grace. Those moments of crisis where all seems lost or where everything is going wrong is actually, I've come to believe, the answer to your deepest prayer, which is not to be confused with getting what you want. Because a lot of times when we get what we want, it's not what we need. Does that make sense? Like the guy that you think you want versus the guy that's going to love you are probably two different things. I can't tell you how many times I've seen women choose the exciting guy, which is cool at a point, over the guy that makes them actually feel cherished, right? And so what we want to start to do is understand that when things are going wrong, maybe you broke up, maybe he left, to teach you to trust your intuition. Maybe that's why. So the thing that I've learned is that if you say a prayer like, show me abundance, or if you say a prayer that says, I really want to serve the world and live in my purpose and give my gift, or if you say a prayer that says, take away all the things that are not serving my greatest good, that does not mean things are going to go well. We tend to think that things, our prayers are answered when things are going well. But who are we to judge? Einstein had this great quote. He said, in life, we have to decide that either everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle, right? So which means that crisis, when things are ripped away, can be a miracle if we choose to see it that way. And so what did I decide to do? I did what any sort of serious spiritual, spiritual path practitioner would do, and I moved back in with my ex-girlfriend's parents. And what's interesting about that is, kids my age move back in with their parents a lot these days, but not their ex-girlfriend's parents. But we had this kinship and this camaraderie, and I'm so grateful to them because at the time, I had started this Twitter account called @TheDailyLove, and we had done very well. We had about 1,000 followers, about 500 people in our newsletter, and I was thinking, maybe there's something behind this. And the message I kept getting was, go all in on plan A. In fact, I think it was Will Smith that said plan B is a distraction from plan A. A lot of people live plan B because it's too scary to live plan A, right? Now think about that. People say they have faith. A lot of people have faith, including myself, when there's money in the bank and you have the love that you want and you have a roof over your head and you have food and shelter and all that kind of stuff. But somehow that faith washes away when you're cold, wet, tired, and hungry and alone. But those moments, I think, are the moments where you really start to understand who you are. And I also believe that sometimes things are ripped away because there are these false, false foundation that you are relying upon. And when those things are ripped away and you see how powerful you really are and how much grace there truly is in the universe, you recognize that there's very little that you actually need and that you can take greater and greater risks. And so I believe that, what's cool about this process is that once we start to take risks and we get a little bit of validation on that risk, what do? We're like, oh, I'll take a bigger risk. And then we get a little bit more validation. And then a bigger risk, and a bigger risk, and a bigger risk. And my takeaway from all the upheaval that's happening right now in the world is not just because the economy is crumbling, not because the world is so messed up, but because a lot of us are guilty of not living our purpose, letting fear and doubt run us, and we're going through a global crisis. And we get to fix it one-on-one. Not a crisis of oil, not a crisis of all the stuff that's happening in the world today, whether it's the Trayvon Martin case or whether it's the whole equal marriage conversation, boils down to one thing: please see my intrinsic value. But who has to see your intrinsic value first? The world? You do. So how do you do that? By having massive amounts of faith in yourself, greater than the world could possibly put in you. Because I was having a conversation with Marianne Williamson about this, and I was like, Marianne, how come the media doesn't say like, breaking news, Julie followed her heart for the first time in her life. Look what happened. Like no one says that. And she said, Mastin, that's not the news media's job. Their job is to report on the bigger issues they're having. But that is a big issue. But it's not going to be celebrated in the masses. In fact, it might not even be celebrated by your family or the person you're in a relationship with. I can't tell you how many people don't live their dreams because they can't get past what I sort of consider to be tribal approval of friends, family, institutions, what the world thinks, what the friends think. Oh, who are you to be so happy? It's like, who are you to be so negative? And so it takes a tremendous amount of courage to do what I'm talking about. So why did I move in with my ex-girlfriend's parents? Well, they offered me this 8x8 pool house. Now, I had just worked with, a Grammy-winning artist and produced shows at the Grammys and had a huge run in the music business before this, right around the same time the clothing business was happening. And I was traveling all over the world. All that stuff was kind of happening again, but then it all crumbled again. And I was like, maybe I'm not supposed to be successful. But there was this voice that said, just write every day. That's all you have to do is write every day. So I looked at my bank, and I had $14,000 in the bank. And depending on what city you live in, that's a lot or a little. In LA, that's like not that much, considering rent and food and gas, all that stuff. So I think I had figured out I could, if I didn't have to pay rent, and I really watched my budget, I could live for 6 months in LA on that money, which is like, a long time in Los Angeles on $14,000. So what did I do? I was in the room, and I wrote, and I tweeted, and I wrote, and I tweeted, and I wrote, and I tweeted, and I wrote, and I tweeted. And I started to get so angry because I was like, this is a jail cell. This 8x8 room is like a prison. That's what this feels like. And, in my conversation, sort of in my meditation with my higher power, I'm thinking to myself like, okay, hold up. Everybody talks about abundance, right? The Dyers, the Chopras, Eckhart, everybody talks about how the world is abundant. Louise Hay, Oprah, The Secret, all these things. 8x8, man! What is up with this 8x8 thing? This is not my definition of abundance. I don't think this is abundance at all. This feels like torture. And I was like, why am I here? Why did you put me in this room? In LA, I can't tell you how many of my friends, are going through a hard time. Their friend has a vacation home in LA and they get the whole house and they can house sit for 6 months or something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, like, where's my friend with the vacation house? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on here? And the answer I got back after some meditation was, Mastin, this room represents the size of your faith. This room represents the size of your faith. And it was so humbling because I thought I had faith this whole time, but I didn't have faith. What I had was a desperate need to feel important. And that's what drove everything. That's what drove the drugs. That's what drove everything in the music business. I felt powerless, and I wanted to prove that I was something. Now, that's a noble cause, but it drove me to the brink of addiction. It drove me to the brink of financial ruin. It drove me to the brink of losing all kinds of incredible relationships. And I realized in that moment, wow, thank you for that, because I needed to be humbled. And I felt very sad in that moment, because I was like, wow, this room the universe is so infinite, and this little room is so small. I must not have that much faith. And then the voice or the whatever said to me, remember your Bible. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Faith the size of a what? Of a mustard seed can move mountains. That's not a Christian principle, that's a spiritual principle. Faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. Do you realize how many mustard seeds I could fit in the 8x8 room? I'm like, oh my God, I have so much faith, right? It's all about that perspective shift. And I was like, I can do this. So I started writing more and tweeting more and writing more and tweeting more. And then about a month later, somehow my inbox just flooded with, with people adding me on Twitter. And I was like, what's going on? So I went on Twitter, and somehow Kim Kardashian had found out about my At The Daily Love account and tweeted it out to 2.2 million people. I now recently found out, I've been wanting to know how did that happen, and her friend Brittany Gastineau turned her on to it, so I'm so grateful to Brittany. But overnight, we went from 1,000 followers to 10,000. Overnight. And I'm like, holy cow. And that to me was a sign that like I'm on the right track. I'm going to keep doing this. So I kept writing, kept tweeting, and I thought that I was going to be couch surfing and in that little 8x8 room with my ex-girlfriend's parents for like a month or two. 12 months. And it wasn't 12 months and then I moved out. It was 12 months and then another 12 months with other friends. So I actually ended up couch surfing for 2 years. But the whole time, writing, adding value, growing the list, sharing my stories, really trying to add value to other people's lives. And slowly but surely, things started to materialize. And as I was ready, teachers showed up. I got to meet Anthony Robbins, and a lot of people think Anthony is sort of this like big guy with big teeth and kind of a salesman. He treated me with so much compassion. He invited me to a seminar at UPW, and it completely changed my life. The firewalking one completely changed my life. And then what was interesting about Tony is that, at his event, he talks about his other events. And a lot of times in personal growth, that can kind of be seen as like, you're selling me and this isn't really that great or authentic. But what's beautiful about Tony is his stuff really works. But I was still skeptical because he was talking about this thing, date with destiny. And he was talking to 4,000 people about it. And I was like, this guy just wants to sell these people to his next thing. This is bullshit. What's up with this? Well, what's interesting is the next day I had a meeting with him and was set up to be scheduled. And he starts talking about date with destiny to me. Broke Mastin, right? And he has this, imagine him, I don't know if you guys know about him, he's like huge, he's like 6'8", and he's just like this big energy, and he's like talking to 4,000 people about this passionate event. And imagine that same guy talking to me with that same level of passion. I'm like, oh, like he's just like, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, let me put this straight. I can't buy your product. There's nothing I can give you. I have no value to you. I have 100,000 people on Twitter, so what? You have millions of people, you're a total rock star in the space, like you don't need anything from me. And he's like, Mastin, you must come. This is gonna change your life, it's gonna be incredible. Oh my God, and his wife, Sage, is like, yes, Mastin, you must be there, you have to come. And I'm like, guys, thank you, but I can't afford this. It's not gonna happen. So he gifted it to me as a gift. And I was like, whoa, talk about integrity. This guy, the same level of passion that he was talking about in front of 4,000 people, was talking about it in front of me, one person. That could give him nothing, and he had my respect from that moment forward, because I really believe that he was about service. And so what happens? Go to Date with Destiny, 6-day program. That after that day, I go every single year. This year, I'm bringing 40 of my friends because it's like so powerful. And in that moment, in that 6-day process, recognized one of the most profound shifts of my life, which is this idea. He has these 6 human needs that he talks about. And 2 of them are the need for significance, which is that need to be important, and the need for love. And I had an equation going on in my head, which was the more important I become, the more love I get. That was the equation that was running me. The more important I become, the more love I get. Is that true? How many people that we think are important are alone at the top, not fulfilled? They might have a tremendous amount. No, there are lots of people who are at the top that are happy and fulfilled, but there are also a lot of people that have tremendous wealth or success, but are lacking spiritually. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy. And no wonder things haven't worked out. And then I started to look back over my life, and every single endeavor that I had created that was based on that equation failed and brought massive pain. Not just businesses, but relationships. They had failed. And I had this huge aha moment, and I was like, oh, divine storm. That's where it came to me. This is a divine storm. That was protection. All of that pain prevented me from even worse pain. Worse pain. And it was an incredible, like I felt like, you ever had like an aha moment where you feel like you can kind of see the matrix and it all makes sense for a moment and then it goes away and you're like, where'd it go? Come back, right? So it was one of those moments for me. And I said, okay, from now on, I'm gonna realize that loving is the most significant act on the planet. And it doesn't have to be some grandiose, announced version of love. Carolyn Mace talks about how the divine comes in humble packages. Jesus was born in the manger, not at the Ritz-Carlton, right? And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to dedicate myself to love and contribution and helping other people. And like really do it. Not do it from a place of pretending to do it, but like really do it. And from that moment forward, where I made that connection to service, rather than trying to be important, like I had this realization, oh my God, because it's so scary to put yourself out there and really risk it all, right? And the realization was, in order to become anything, I have to risk being nothing. And for someone who's significance-driven, that really wants to have that sense of importance and certainty, terrifying thought that all this could mean that I'm just alone and by myself. But I thought to myself, what's the other possibility to just keep going with the significant? We know how that works out. Haven't you experienced enough pain? Marianne Williamson reminds us that from A Course in Miracles, there's two ways we can learn. We can learn through joy or we can learn through pain. But either way, we're going to learn. So I was like, you know what? I'm good with the pain. I'm good. I want to learn through joy from now on. And the way to do that is to really focus on how can I serve. And I do think there's a magical sweet spot in the world where what you love to do meets the pain of the world. That's like an incredible place to live. Those moments when you feel so lit up and so inspired and so, like this for me right now, like I don't even know how long I've been up here. It feels like 5 seconds because time's just going by for me. And I see you, and I see the faces, and some of you are like, whoa. And some of you are like, but I don't care. I love it up here. This is incredible, right? It's so much fun. But this is for me, and I know that there is something inside of each and every one of you that is calling yourself out into uncertainty. And if I can help be a catalyst for that, nothing lights me up more. So this, for me, is where I meet that intersection, or writing the daily love, or coaching people, or going on retreats with people, or whatever we do. Those are all different ways that we really love to serve people. We're doing a daily love extravaganza. I interviewed 35 people. We had 40,000 people sign up. Like that lights me up, and the universe supports more of that. And that's where synchronicity comes from. People think that you get synchronicity by using a vision board. And I'm like, come on, are you really that entitled to think that because you cut out a freaking picture in a magazine that you deserve it? Like, really? You think that? I'm talking to myself when I say that. It's like, no, power flows to those that serve. Synchronicity, it exponentially increases when we give, when we serve other people. And that's when the love of my life came into my life. I met Jenna, the love of my life, my soulmate. And I really believe that the divine God brought Jenna into my life as a direct sort of thank you for how much good and service I had given to the world. Because she is so good and she loves me more than I love myself. She's incredible. She came into my life. Financial abundance came into my life. And then the question that everybody always asks me is, how'd you get on Oprah? And I'm like, I don't know how I got on Oprah. They found me, and I don't know how they fit. Just like with Kim, I don't know how these things happen, but they just happen. And I really believe that, I don't say these things to brag or to drop names, but like that's some cool shit if you think about it. Like couch surfing, no money, the breakthroughs, like meeting Tony, like how did that happen? Like just all these amazing synchronicities. It's like the universe guiding one more step. This is your next teacher. This is your next teacher. This is your next teacher. And then at some point, because we are human beings and we need proof, there has to be some payoff. You can't just go for your whole lifetime with no payoff. And what's cool about the payoffs, like the Tony or the Oprah, is for me, it gives me like a sense of like real approval from sort of the divine that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and what that allows me to do is take greater risks. Because really, the way I sort of imagine it is, you can imagine, just go with me for a second on the whole heaven analogy. You might not believe in heaven, but just pretend like you're 5 and we're watching a cartoon for a second, okay? So imagine there's like all these angels in heaven, and the angel is like, everyone has an angel, and the angel's like, Mastin, go left. No, go left. No, left. Damn it. And then like the puddle splashes you, right? Or something happens, right? And how many times they must be so frustrated. Don't kiss him, whatever. Like, Alice, don't kiss him. He's bad. Oh, she kissed him. Damn it. Is she sleeping with him? Does she know what she's doing to her biochemistry right now? It's going to take 9 months to get over tonight. God, right? And they're so frustrated. And someday, someone comes along, and Lisa over here is like, wait, did I hear a whisper? There's this whisper. Go right? Yes, go right, not left, go right. I'm going to go right. And the angel's like, holy, this is incredible. She went right. Guys, come here. And all of the angels who are like so bored with us because we're not listening rush over to Lisa, and they're like, Lisa, go right again. Yes, you can do it. And then she goes left, and they're all like, damn it, we had her for a second. Right? And I really kind of think that what happens, there's some type of universal force that celebrates us taking risks. And it really wants us to expand and to grow, but we have to get through the fear. And here's something interesting about fear, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier with the idea of amygdala, right? And fear being the opposite of love. I actually think that facing your fear is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself. Now, what I mean by that is not, again, like the guy in the alleyway analogy. You have to be smart about this. So if there's a guy with a knife or gun in the alleyway, and you're like, Mastin said, face my fear. Hey, man, how you doing? Are you having a good day? No, don't do that, right? You don't want to face that type of fear. If you're in mortal danger, we don't want to face that. However, generally speaking, we can't tell the difference in our amygdala between the guy in the alleyway with a knife and leaving a toxic relationship. We can't tell the difference between that type of danger and starting a business. We can't tell the difference between sometimes even that and giving up caffeine. Come on, who here has felt like if you give up caffeine, you're really gonna die? Be honest, I know that's me, right? But there's like these little things that, I'm not saying you should, by the way, if you just switch coffee for matcha, it's incredible what happens, by the way. And the teeth, they get better, it's amazing. So, because you know, it doesn't, anyway, whatever, it doesn't dye your teeth that weird brown. Anyway, so I had someone come up to me yesterday, or last week, and go, your teeth aren't yellow anymore. I'm like, my teeth were yellow? What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, I haven't had coffee in 3 months. She's like, that must be why. I'm like, is there a more gracious way for you to say that next time? But it's like, any type of change, we tend to equate with certain death. And what's interesting is that, you know, the amygdala is firing. Here's another place where the amygdala fires, fight or flight response, and self-righteousness comes in. Come on, Facebook. That comment that you know, that what did they say? I'm gonna show them what they said. They're so wrong because of what they believe, right? And how could they possibly think about this, right? And then you say something, and then you wait and you check and you check and you check. And then they say something else, and you're like, oh, I knew it, you were gonna say that. Oh, you're so wrong, right? And the whole time, it's like your dream is like, at what point will you be joining me on this lifetime, right? And because we're in this idea of like, I have to defend myself to be right or I will die. We have this equation going on in our heads. And it's so incredible how many things come up in our lives that seem like really great excuses or really great reasons to justify not pursuing our dreams. Here's a couple. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I'm not smart enough. I'm too young or I'm too old. And here's one that I see a lot. And some of you might disagree with me, and that's fine. But parents put their kids first. So dangerous. So dangerous. If you put your kids ahead of your relationship and ahead of your purpose, you are setting a really bad example for them. Maybe not now, because Mastin, what do you mean? I have to be there for them. Listen, you know what my mom's doctor told her after I was born? Literally, now he was not the most gracious man, right? But he said, right after I'm born, like still in that phase, I've never been there, but like, you know, I'm trying to imagine the vulnerability a woman must be feeling in that moment. This is what he said, deadpan. He goes, well, he doesn't need you anymore. And my mom was like, how could you say that? Oh my God, you know? But that's the truth. Think about this. Think about any other mammal, right? Like, what do? Or birds, what do they do with the youth? They're like, get out of here, come on, go. What do? Oh, happy 35th birthday, honey. When are you moving out of the basement, right? Like, we have this major attachment to our children, which is great, but it's a really good excuse not to follow your dreams. Who is going to argue with the fact that you have 1, 2, 3 kids, and they're so important to you, and you have to take care of them? No one's going to come to you and go, is that a like real clever excuse for you not to go into uncertainty? Let's think about that. What's easier, to take care of your kids or to write your book? What's easier for you, to take care of your kids or to start your business? Oh, but I have so many kids and I can't write a blog. It's 300 words, people. And what's interesting, especially with the people that I talk to that have children, it's all about getting leverage. And the question I always ask them, which seems so obvious, is like, okay, well, let's just go like to some really scary place. Let's say that I have a gun and I'm holding it to your kid's head. That's a graphic image, but imagine that. And if you don't write your blog once a week for 6 months, they're gone. Would you be able to find time? Yes, Madison, I would find the time. I can't think about that. Okay, so it's not about that you don't have the time. It's not a priority for you because we tend to prioritize the comfortable stuff. Now, this is not to discount how hard it is to earn a living or how hard it is to be a parent or how hard it is to do these things. But if you think about the price that you pay, not necessarily in the short term, but in the long term, one of the number one things, there was a study recently done of people on their deathbed in England and like what their number one regrets were. Do you want to know what one of the top regret was? Dying people. Hopefully you don't have to die to get this. I wish I would have put more of my dreams first. We get lost in relationships. We get lost in all kinds of things. And especially with women, because you know the daily love is 93% female, that men to 10 thing, I can't tell you how many women I know or that I hear from that are like maybe early 50s into 60s and they're finally empty nesters and they're kind of sad, but they're like, oh, I can finally have my life back. And it's like, you could have had your life the whole time, but for some reason you put these kids first. Or the same thing in relationships. I can't tell you how many women that I coach that are recently single, and part of the reason why they're recently single is because they made him everything. Now, that's awesome on a certain level. Like, it's great to have a man be your king or your hero, or if you're in a same-sex relationship, your partner be that way. But it's something different to outsource your power to that person and to hide in that person. Do you guys know what I'm talking about, those differences? So my hope as we sort of go through this process is twofold. One, that when you see those moments of crisis in your life, when you see those moments where things like all hell is breaking loose, to take a moment, maybe go on your meditation pillow, maybe do some breath of fire, do some asana, whatever it is that grounds you, and ask the question, what if this was grace? What if this was grace? If this was grace, if Einstein says that I get to decide that everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle, what if this was a miracle? Even the hard stuff, like the kick in the teeth stuff, what if that was a miracle? And if you ask yourself that, say, if this was grace, what would I do? If this was grace, what would I do? Would I go back? Or would I go into uncertainty? And then the other question becomes, if the crisis is grace, the other question becomes, what am I doing when I get uncertain? There's all kinds of things that we do. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a glass of wine every once in a while, or you can't have chocolate, or you can't do these things, but when you get debilitated because you're not pursuing your passion, all kinds of things happen. And I really believe, unless you are like now I have no degrees. I just see people and my clients and the people I work with online. What I see is that when people follow their passion, even if it's scary, somehow depression seems to slowly go away. Because I've come to believe that repression tends to lead to depression most of the time. Now, there are a lot of people who have major chemical imbalances. I'm not talking about like that type of stuff, and I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, and there's very little I know about actual brain chemistry. There's very little we know about actual brain chemistry, period. But there's very little that I know about it. But what I've seen is that people, think about this. If you were born, and you were born as a soul to give a gift and to live a purpose on the planet, and you don't follow it, what's the obvious thing to happen? Of course you're going to be depressed or sad, because you're not living what you're supposed to be living. And how can you tell what you're supposed to be doing? Here's a great place. Where do you feel jealous of other people? Because here's what jealousy is. Jealousy is unrecognized potential in yourself. Whoever you're jealous of has something that you want for yourself that you have not recognized. So whenever I get jealous, I celebrate. I'm like, whoa, I want that. And I don't get mad at that person. I thank that person because I'm like, okay, I'm going to go work on myself. So it's very important that we start to recognize these things, because then we start to take our power back from the world. And it's no longer about our circumstances. Having a circumstance is a very easy thing to justify staying the same, or family karma, right? But what's interesting, has anyone here read Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl? A couple people, one, two people? That's a shame. It's a great book. So Viktor Frankl was in Auschwitz during the Holocaust and lost a lot of his family. And what's interesting is, even in sort of like the depths of what you could consider to be hell on earth, he found and was kind of had a scientific mind. And what he found was that the people who lived through hell on earth, not the people that were taken away and killed, but the people who were in the camps that weren't. Some people died in the camps because they didn't have a vision. But what he found is people who have a compelling vision for their compelling future, something that pulls them forward, can survive any circumstance. Now, whatever you're going through probably pales in comparison to that situation. And I bring it up because it's so dramatic and so well known that it's like, okay, what's my vision for the future? Because a vision is so much more powerful than a circumstance. But it's so much easier to justify, well, yeah, have you seen the economy lately? Have you seen, one thing in families we hear a lot, well, it's always been done this way, right? I remember one time I went home for Thanksgiving, and a family member came up to me and they said, you know, Mastin, that whole daily love thing, don't think that's the thing for you. That's not the thing for you. It's not going to work. And I just wanted to let you know that because I love you. I'm thinking to myself, like, fuck you, asshole. Like, what? But why was he doing that? Why would a family member say something like that to you? Because they hate you? Because they want you to fail? Not at all. They want you to have a sense of certainty which is very important. We talked about certainty. But your model of the world and what your spirit has been called here to do will completely challenge probably almost all models of certainty that your family or the world has set up. The idea, think about this, even 40 years ago, the idea, the internet didn't even really exist then, but the idea of like making money online and having a worldwide audience is something that you thought would only be possible for like a multinational corporation, right? I'm a guy that couch surfed, and that's my reality, and there's so many people coming online that are doing this now with coaching and healing and yoga. And so there's a new paradigm that gets to be created, and I want to kind of I'm not sure how much time I have left. You guys know what time it is? I'm over. Oh, okay. See what I mean? Okay, so I'll kind of wrap up on this. No one told me. Okay, cool. Okay, so the thing that I kind of want to wrap up on is really give you guys some credit, because how many people in here are yoga teachers? I'm curious. Awesome, a lot of yoga teachers. How many people in here like just study yoga and know a lot about yoga? I'm curious. So you guys, who here, let me ask you a different question. Who here doesn't know who Patanjali is? A couple people. Okay, so Patanjali is kind of the father of what we consider to be modern yoga, and he wrote the Yoga Sutras, and he's an incredible someone to study if you don't know about him. And he, especially in teacher trainings, he's kind of revered as this guy who distilled down all this knowledge. And I have great respect for him, and I have great respect for a guy like Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini Yoga to the West, right? But the people that I have the most respect for are you. And the reason why is they have passed on. And not only on top of that, not only have they passed on, they talk about these yogis that go in the cave and meditate. It's relatively easy to go into a cave and meditate and be equanimous and have a sense of comfort. I wonder what would happen, I'm just curious, if you took Patanjali and put him in Times Square. Go, okay, practice those 8 limbs now, or in Boston when the bombing happened, right? Or in any crisis that we're seeing these days, right? Put him in, Oakland the other day when the Trayvon Martin verdict came out, right? What we are up against right now, a friend of mine was talking about how, all the whole Trayvon thing happened, and then there's been so many things happening in the news lately, and she's like, God, the world's going crazy. It's never been like this before. I'm like, really? Yes, it's been way worse than this. We just didn't have a 24-hour news cycle, and by the way, when a butterfly flaps its wings in India, we know the second it happens. So it's not that things haven't happened before, we're just so much more aware of it. So all of that is compressing onto our psyche. And it's creating more stress in the body. And so you guys, I really do believe that you guys are the people that I really bow to, because our job is not to go be in a monastery or go meditate in a cave. Our job is to be on a meditation pillow and be out in the world and do what Joseph Campbell said, which is, I cannot cure the world of all the sorrows, but I can choose to participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world. And I really do believe that that is our calling to do that, because why do we practice in the first place? We don't practice to deny the world. We practice to live fully in the world. And the way that we do that is really by having that courage to go through the pain, to go through the hard times, to go through the process that really is, it takes a real master to be able to go through the process of facing your fear. That's not an easy process to do. And it's not something that people self-initiate. Usually the universe, there's the divine whisper, there's the divine nudge, there's the divine suggestion, there's the divine holla, there's the divine email, there's the divine tweet, then there's the divine, wind, and then there's kind of the divine rain shower, and then there's the divine kind of thunderstorm, and then there's a divine hurricane. And the hurricane comes through and you're like, I never saw that coming. And if you really think about it, it's yes, we have seen it coming for a really long time. So my hope here, why it's called Crisis to Grace, is to recognize in the moment, not later, but in the moment, that moments of crisis are moments of grace. And to really take the practice that we're here to do this weekend at Wanderlust, which is this beautiful yoga practice in this beautiful environment, and take it and cultivate it on the mat, and then as Sean Corn talks about, take it off the mat and into the world, and not just in the happy moments, but in the moments that trigger us the most, because those are the moments where we grow the most. And I didn't realize that I'm over. So I'm so grateful for you guys for being here. But first of all, I just want to thank you guys for being able to hold your attention for so long. Thank you so much.